Hey there, Bixby developers. Today we will be finishing up the Input View Tutorial 2021 edition, and this is part 3. So continuing from where we left off,
What is your name?
we were working on a survey capsule.
It's a pleasure to meet you, John. What is your email address? When did you start using Bixby? When are you planning to build something for Bixby? Here's what I found.
So we're going to be finishing this capsule by adding a question that asks if the user likes this capsule, as well as asking them for additional feedback. And finally, we'll be making this result view look a lot better by, actually building a result view for it instead of this default view that you get. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the like concept to this because we are going to be asking the user if they like this capsule. And this will be a simple true or false. So it will just be a Boolean. And as with pretty much anything that you add to Bixby like this, you're going to want to add everything to the corresponding spots. We want to add this to the action as well as to the JavaScript. And we'll also need to add this to the endpoint as well. So now that we've done the basic plumbing for this, next it's time to add the input view itself. So right-click the views and simply click View. And here we're going to add a like.view.bxb, and we're going to delete that and change this to an input view. And this is going to be a pretty simple input view in comparison to some of the previous ones, but we're just going to ask, do you like this capsule? And we're going to render a form with the elements, and this one we're going to be using a switch input. The switch input is basically the thing where you can just click the toggle, to be yes or no. And the primary text for this is yes, I do like this capsule. And the secondary text, I also like this tutorial, and we'll give it a thumbs up. That's right, guys. Don't forget to smash that thumbs up button. And finally, the default value to this will be true. So that's what this value here is. And if the user ends up clicking on the toggle, then it will switch this value to false. So next we need the onSubmit, and similar to the rest of the inputs that we've done so far, it will have the goal of the like concept that we created, and we will be referring to the form element of like that we defined here in this ID, and that's what it will be returning. And of course this is going to grab the value from here and then return it to the action. Let's go ahead and see if that works.
Do you like this capsule?
And here we have reached this view, and we can see that it is a simple toggle on and off, and you can see the primary text right here. Yes, I do like this capsule, as well as the secondary text. I also like this tutorial, and we'll give it a thumbs up. And the user, of course, can click go as well.
Here's what I found.
And there we go. And if we go over to our base right here, we will actually need to create a vocab file for this. And here we have this vocab folder. So under ENUS, just right click and then new vocabulary. And this will be vocabulary for like. And what does this vocab for like look like? The thing is, this training example will need to return true and false. Of course, since it's a Boolean, this has to return true or false. But of course, the user using, speech will perhaps say a bunch of different ways to say true or false. They're not just going to say true or false. Like, for example, they could say yes, yeah, yes, I do like this capsule, so on and so forth. And you're going to want to add a bunch of different variations of this that you feel like the user will say. That way your capsule will be able to more easily pick it up. And of course, we need to do the same for false. And we can see here that we've added a few different basically synonyms or vocab equivalents to false and true as well. So now if the user says any of these things, they can be picked up by Bixby as either true or false. And you notice here that it didn't actually show the light, and that's because we forgot to add it in one spot. We forgot to add it to the survey model right here. And we're just gonna need to add this really quick. There we go. And now it should show up once we actually get to that point again. And there it is. The like thing returned true. So now let's go ahead and add the training example for the whether or not you like this capsule. Just click add and then type in the phrase that you want. In this case, just a simple no. And this will be like, and the form will be false. So for the goal, it's just going to be like at prompt for like. And let me actually explain this a little bit. Here we can see that because we specified the form as false, what Bixby is going to do is it's going to look through the vocabulary to see that, hey, this no here is a vocabulary for false. And thus it will be able to figure that out and then return the proper Boolean that we specified in the vocab file from earlier. Let's go ahead and try that out. And here we can say yes, which we had as a synonym to true from earlier.
Here's what I found.
And there we go. There it is. And it also grabbed true for us and returned it just as we needed. Next, let's add the feedback concept. And we're going to just be kind of gathering some feedback from the user with the last question. And it's just going to be a text feedback, just like that. And now we have to add it to all the places as usual. We need to add it here in the action. We need to add it to the JavaScript. We need to add it to the action, or sorry, to the endpoints. And finally, we need to add it to our end result survey. And next, we also need to create an input view for this. Right-click views, and then, select the view, and then this will just be feedback.view.bxb. Select all, delete, and we will create the input view, which matches the feedback concept. So we're going to want a message here, and it can be whatever message you want. And now we will render another form with a text area element. And this text area basically makes it easier to allow users to provide longer form feedback because it's kind of like a block where they can type or input whatever they want into that block. And here we can also dictate a max character length for the feedback, and we're going to set that to 1000 for this example. And as with all the forms, we need an on submit. And the goal will just be feedback, and we will be grabbing it from the viv.core.form element feedback, which of course matches the ID right here. Great, and while we're at it, let's just go ahead and take care of the training example for this as well. Because, this is just gathering long form feedback, we can just have, make sure to click add, then input the text and then click add there. But you can just tag the whole thing and set that as feedback. And the goal will be feedback at prompt for feedback. Save, and there we go. Now it will grab, multiple word entry or into the voice input and return that as feedback. Let's go ahead and try it out.
What is your name? What kind of tutorials would you like to see next? Any additional feedback?
And of course, you can type the feedback here. Or you can type the feedback here.
Here's what I found.
And there we go. We can see that it returned. It also grabbed it from our previous training example that we created just for this. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to create a result view to make this look a little bit better. And just right-click view. And I'm going to name this one survey.view.bxb to match, the name of the concept that we are matching this with. And we can add a custom message. Here are your survey, not result. We want to match survey, not result. And here I added the message, here are your incredibly thoughtful and appreciative responses. So if you need more insight into creating result views, we do have tutorials on that on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. But we're just going to be creating a series of paragraphs with, some kind of label for it. And we'll be putting underneath those labels the value of the proper thing that the user inputted. So here we can see that this will display your name, your name, and then it will display the actual name that the user inputted. So I'm just going to do this real quick for a few of this element. And we actually want to add dividers between each of these. That way it'll be more aesthetically pleasing and more easy to distinguish between the different elements. So for this one, in terms of whether or not they liked the tutorial, we actually want to provide them feedback based on the Boolean that we extracted. And here we're just going to use a simple if-else clause. And if they ended up liking it, and that's not it, it's if. And if they ended up liking it, it will be, looks like you like this tutorial. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. Else, we'll say I'm grief-stricken that you did not like this. Hit that dislike button twice to show your disdain. And after this if clause, we can just add a divider. And the last bit of thing that we gathered from them was the feedback, and we'll just add simple copy paste and replace the text and replace the value down here. So that should do it. And let's go ahead and take a look at our result view.
What is your name? It's a pleasure to meet you, John. When did you start using Bixby? When are you planning to build something for Bixby? Do you like this capsule? What kind of tutorials would you like to see next? Any additional feedback? Here are your incredibly thoughtful and appreciated responses.
And there we go. Now you can see that we have a much better looking result view that also provides a little bit of additional feedback. For example, whether or not they like the capsule, we have some flavor text for it. And yeah, it just ends up looking a lot better than it used to. And that wraps up our input view part 3, as well as the input view series for 2021. I hope you found this video helpful, and hopefully you learned how to use input views for Bixby in 2021. And yeah, that's it.